Alrighty, great. Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm here with my good friends, Catherine and Karen, and today we are talking about, what are we talking about? Oh, verse 40 of the Tao Te Ching as interpreted by Wayne Dyer from his book, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao. And today's chat or discussion topic is how to shed your ego or shed the ugly demands of your ego and live a more peaceful and more spiritual existence. So, but before we get going on that, I want to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves. And so guys, jump out and say hey.
Hello, this is Catherine Clement from Boulder, Colorado. Looking forward to this discussion.
And this is Karen Lohoff. It's crazy. I'm going to be 67 next month, and I'm still wanting to say I'm from Cody, Wyoming. But I've lived in Arizona for way too many years, I guess.
Awesome. Congrats, Karen. Happy birthday, or soon to be birthday. That's awesome. Glad to hear it. And it's wonderful how we all can to celebrate the day that we were born, right? And how awesome it is to be alive and be here in this wonderful world. And then be able to be here discussing these topics with our friends, right? So, verse 40, who wants to read it? It's a pretty short one this week. You guys want to read it? You want me to read it? Anyone? Okay, I'll do it. I'm already unmuted. So, okay, 40th verse. Returning is the motion of the Tao. Yielding is the way of the Tao. The 10,000 things are born of being. Being is born of non-being. Pretty short. I think that's the shortest verse we've had so far, isn't it? What do you guys think about that? What does that mean? I think that is the shortest verse. What's the first thought that came to you on that when you first read it?
I thought that's the shortest verse we've ever had so far.
Right. It's one of those ones that's you're kind of like, what? Okay, well, I love the fact that we've got this whole chapter from Wayne Dyer where he meditates for 3 days and thinks about it and then tells us what he thinks it means, because then we can be like, oh, okay, yeah, I get that, but then I think this instead, or, whatever. What do you think, Karen? Did you have any thoughts when you first read the verse before you read the chapter? You're muted.
I'm saying, can you hear me? And the reason I'm saying that is because I was fiddling around trying to see, can I see anything besides the screen so that I could read to you or remind myself what it is? I don't know. I can usually manipulate my screen and do all kinds of fun things, but I'm just not so handy dandy today. Okay, returning. Actually, I have to tell you that when I volunteered to write this up, I must have been on a different verse because I was reading about water. And since I can't think of anything to say about water right now, I have to tell you before you read it, that this is the first time I ever thought that Lao Tzu might be a woman. It's when he says the 10,000 things are born of being, and it made me think of giving birth. And you give birth, and then there's 10,000 things. You've just come back from tending a baby, so you know that all at once. I mean, really, your whole life just changes, and it just ramps up from there. and just goes on to more and more, 10,000 things. But really, I think this being is born of non-being. Although there's different comments than what my thought was, I would like to mention that it is the non-being part of me, the things that I desire, the things that I dream, the things that I want. When I first started studying Abraham Hicks, which now is 12 years ago, I guess, there was a lot of wording around wantings. She referred to wantings. I'm talking about Esther now, speaking for Abraham. What are your wantings? And she still asked, do you know what you're wanting? And I was kind of weirded out by the whole thing at first, but then I got used to talking about my wantings, and then I had to realize that was inappropriate, that we don't talk about wanting. If we want it, we talk about having it. And so in my mind, there's just kind of a lot to accomplishing what we want to do in life, a lot of learning, and I have no earthly idea how people accomplish that without taking on a serious study of self-improvement. So that's my share until I gear up some more.
Thanks, Karen. Welcome, Jason. How are you this morning? You are non-sounding. Got the no sound thing going again. Did you say bummer? I thought that looked like your the lip reading part that we sometimes are able to do. Oh man. Okay, well, maybe you can mess with it a minute and figure it out. And if you do, then jump in there. That'd be great. Right on. Okay. Oh yeah, I like what you were just saying, Karen, about the being, and then the non-being into being, kind of like giving birth, and then all the 10,000 things, and I thought that I didn't even think about it that way, but I agree with you. You're right, and of course, in the chapter, that's where Wayne starts talking about that the quantum physics and the fact that all particles come from basically from nothing. They come from an energy force versus a physical matter, which I thought was really interesting. And so, of course, if we're saying that we come from a spiritual or a energy-like substance, that really isn't, that doesn't even make sense either, because if it's not matter, then it wouldn't be substance. But that energy into the world of physical form is that then we all of a sudden, by transitioning over that barrier between non-being and being, is then all of a sudden there's all these 10 million things coming at us at 10 million miles an hour, and then we lose what we might have had, would have been that focus per se of what we came here to do, because we're bombarded with all of these things. And same thing is like when you give birth to a baby, so all of a sudden you've got this baby, and then you've got all these 10 million things. So I think that was an awesome, what is it called when you compare one thing to another? There's a word for that. It always eludes me though. I don't know. I'm done for now.
Analogy?
Analogy. There you go. That was a great analogy.
One that you could seriously relate to with a brand new grandbaby, and watching your daughter's life change, or son's life change, and the newest one, I guess, right? Is the newest one your son's or your daughter's? Okay.
Yes, it's my son, and I'm so I'm so happy for him, and he's going to make the most awesome dad. I mean, he already is. He's just taken to it like he was born for it. And so is my daughter, or my future daughter-in-law. She is as well. I mean, they're both doing wonderful, and I'm so in love with all of them and this whole new family that they have created. And but yeah, it's pretty amazing. But I can see it's interesting to watch the whole family dynamics, the new family, from a perspective of already having gone through it, right? You know, because you have this, you already know what they're in for, and it's all wonderful, but it's all crazy at the same time. And so you can see the little bits of fear in their eyes, and love and awe and all of that, and it's just amazing to watch. And I'm just so blessed with all of them and my daughter and her boyfriend as well. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. It's very heartwarming, or I don't know what word I'm looking for, but when you're watching your children raise children, there's something about that. I don't know what it is, but it's really cool. And sadly, I did not get to read Wayne's words of wisdom written after this. I just kind of actually got to read this morning because I've been so crazy. But returning is the motion of the Tao. It's interesting because when I read that, and now with the internet and our ability to learn about how energy works, you guys have seen, I forget what it's called, the Torah or something, you know, where that where we've learned that energy just kind of goes in on itself and comes back on around and goes in on itself, you know, that Torah something. Anyway, there's a name for it, but it's constantly circling, recircling, like recycling around and around in this big thing like this. And that's what I think of when I read that first, returning is the motion of the Tao, because there's no, energy is not ever stagnant, really. There's always some motion to it. Or if it does get blocked up, you know, that's where we run into some problems. But pretty much everything is just in this cycle. And then yielding is the way of the Tao. To me, that brings up thinking about when you have maybe a not seeing eye to eye with someone, or you've come up across something that is super, super frustrating, and you just feel like you just want to bang your head on the wall or something, you know, and then all of a sudden you realize this is not something I'm necessarily in control of, and you just step back and sort of let go, let God, let go and let God, I guess a lot of people say. To me, that's what that reminds me of. Yielding is the way of the Tao, because, and we've talked about this many times, when you get frustrated or you're at odds with somebody, if you just keep going at it and at it, it just gets worse and worse and worse. You know, so if you can just take that step back and see it from more your God self position, and just breathe and know that it will all work itself out exactly as it's supposed to somehow. We've spoken many times about your business, my business, and God's business. And I think those times when we are the most frustrated is when we're trying to take care of God's business, or your business instead of my business. So I think yielding is a wise thing to learn how to do.
Morning, Chris. Do you have audio? Are you just listening in, or I can see you in the chat? I don't hear anything. Just listen. Okay, cool. All right. Well, you know, if you do figure out how to get on audio, or if you want to jump on your phone or whatever, we'd love to have you add to the conversation whenever. a thought just came up when you were speaking, Catherine, and I'm trying to wrap my head back around to it. Okay. So you're talking about when chaos happens, or when, something happens and you're not you're in disagreement or whatever like that. And, something happened this week for me. For me, it was trying to make a decision. And you know how when you have two things laid out in front of you and you're trying to decide which one is the best route to take. And for us, it was, so we're trying to find an apartment so we can get out of my dad's space. We've decided we're just going to make that commitment, get an apartment, and then just ride out the winter here. And we're committed to this business that Chris has. And even though I really wanted to stay full-time RVing, that isn't in the cards right now. So anyway, so I finally came down to, okay, we're going to make this commitment to get an apartment. And then we've got 10,000 apartments to look at or weed out and decide. We have narrowed it down to basically 2. And of course, one of them was less expensive than the other one, but I liked the one that was more expensive so much better, and so I had all this turmoil going on inside of me going, oh, okay, you don't need that. It's not necessary. You don't have to have this beautiful neighborhood that looks like a vacation spot. You don't have to have, the 2-story and all the windows and south facing and blah, 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 all the things you really want, right? You don't need all that. You really should just spend less money and go into this little place that's just okay. And so I had all that turmoil about that. And of course, then I'm trying to sit here and go, okay, well, is it just my ego that needs all this stuff? Or is it just, am I just arguing with myself because I think I shouldn't spend as much money? Is this a money thing, an abundance issue? Is it, so how you go and you question all these things because you have 10,000 things coming at you. And so finally I was like, it doesn't matter. It matters absolutely neither one, whether it comes from my ego, because both of those all of that mumbo jumbo was coming from my ego, whether I was trying to be in a nicer place or whether I was trying to spend less money. Both of those things were coming from my ego. And, it was one side of it saying, well, you don't need that stuff because you should spend less money and blah, blah, blah. And then the other one is, oh, you just want the nice place so people will think better of you, right? The way that we talk to ourselves is just so mean. It's just mean. And that's all that ego mumbo jumbo that we're talking about here. And so I was like, if both sides of the coin are ego mumbo jumbo, then why not just go with the one that feels the best? And so that was what I chose. I chose the nicer place because I'm like, if I'm going to be in Indiana, I want the consolation of living in a place that seems like a vacation spot, And so then after I made the decision, I went in there and I put all our stuff in to make the application and all of that. And I'm driving out of there and I'm still having all of this tension and worry and, oh my God, what if I made the wrong decision? And, and all that stuff that we do. And I said to myself, I was like, would you just stop? Just stop. It doesn't matter. Every decision you make is perfect. It's the perfect direction that you need to go in for this point in time in your life. And no matter what happens with that, if they approve us or don't approve us or whatever, it's perfect because there is no wrong choice. There is no right choice. It's just a choice. It's just a path. I've chosen to take a step down and it will all work out to the way that it's supposed to work out. It'll all be beautiful. And as soon as I said that to myself, I was like, you're right. It's you're absolutely right. It's okay. No matter what we do, it's okay. And even if, even if I had chosen the other one, that would have been okay too. But, this is the one I wanted, right? So that's the direction I decided to go. I decided to go towards abundance versus towards lack, for one. And then I just told myself, it's okay because all decisions are good. So, I think that's what it's talking about. It's talking about yielding to the fact that, okay, you have this ego stuff going on in your brain. I mean, we all do, because we're in the physical form, and because we're bombarded with all of these things that say you should think this, and all of these other things that say you should think that, and all these people that say you should feel this, and all of this stuff all around us. And the real reality, the underlying reality, is that we came here from a spiritual state into this physical form on purpose. So we came here to experience all of what this is. And so no matter what we do, it's all okay. You know, I mean, so that's what I'm kind of getting out of it. And that's the lesson I learned this week. So anyway, sorry for hogging up the time. Somebody else can jump out there and share their thoughts on that. Do we have sound yet, Jason? Oh, no. Sorry.
No, it's not working. Huh?
Oh, wait. There you are. No, I hear you.
Oh.
You're really quiet.
Okay. Let me see.
Let's see. Is there anything on our end, Catherine, that we can do to increase?
I don't have anything. We can barely hear you, Jason. It's like you're way far away.
You're really quiet for some reason. Pick up the microphone and be like, hello, blah, blah, blah. Talk really close. I don't know. Shout.
Hey guys, how are you today?
There we go.
All right. Well, I really appreciate what you were saying there, Samantha. I'll come back.
Okay, cool.
We can hear you, though.
Yeah.
If you want to speak, we can hear you. I can hear you.
We'll just be really quiet. We'll just tell people if they're listening to you, turn up their volume.
I'll change my settings and come back. I'll be right back.
Okay.
So I loved what you said. If I'm going to live in Indiana, and only somebody who's lived in Indiana understands that, which I completely have. I'm glad you went with the one that felt good, and because you deserve that. And you're right, those little voices in our heads, that's all a bunch of shit going on up in there. That's just like, that Fred Flintstone angel and the devil thing going on, where he's got one on each shoulder talking to him. And I'm glad that you realize, especially since it was still going on afterwards, because that's the thing, it's, I think he might be coming on with sound. That's awesome. Or maybe that's Chris coming out. Hi, Chris.
Yeah, that's me. Hi, guys.
Awesome. Yay, you made it too. Perfect. You want to say something about why you're here? You want to say something about what you thought about this verse?
Why I'm here? Wow. Sorry to interrupt there. Why I'm here? I love being here. I like you guys. I like the Tao Te Ching and Wayne Dyer. Give me a second to think about it. Just go on, continue on.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I actually just realized, a friend of mine just messaged on Facebook last night and said, have you ever read the Tao Te Ching? And I just kind of laughed. I'm like, yeah, you should be at our Saturday morning mastermind. He's on verse 10. So he's got like this Zen book club thing that he's doing, which is really cool. And I guess that's the book that they're studying. So that was really kind of funny to find out we're both studying the same book. But it's interesting.
That's cool. Can you hear me?
Yay! There you
hear
are.
Me?
Awesome.
All right. Okay. Awesome.
Tell us
Hey, Chris. How you doing? It's great to be here and finally be heard, right? Am I coming in too loud or too? Okay. All right. Wow. All right. Yeah. It's great to be here. I'm in Florida, and my heart goes out to everybody on the East Coast, all the way up the East Coast into Georgia and South Carolina, and all the way up in there where they're still feeling it, and there's a lot of destruction over there. So my heart goes out for all the people that lost their lives as well. I mean, really terrible destruction right now, but I have a feeling a lot of, I have a feeling there's be some good that'll come out of it. Really, really monster storm, and we were feeling a lot of gusts over here on the West Coast as well. So I can only imagine. But anyway, also I wanted to come out. I came out earlier, kind of in the middle of what you were saying, Samantha, about kind of taking a step back from and letting things kind of happen. I mean, you went into detail about the ego, is what you're speaking of, I believe. I don't know if that's like part of what drives us sometimes, and sometimes we kind of allow it to like be in the driver's seat, and we sort of allow it to kind of guide our decisions sometimes. But it's also, man, goodness, it's hard, it's hard to sometimes let go of those things that are, habitual knee-jerk reactions, like not wanting to give up a certain responsibility or task to someone else. So, because we feel like that's, something we're responsible for, self-imposed responsibilities that we can kind of, we should be able to let go of, but but we can't for some reason, that. But as you were speaking, you were drawing up so many interesting things about going towards abundance, allowing abundance and making decisions towards abundance and thinking abundantly, not being so hard on ourselves. You're saying, that we can kind of speak to ourselves nastily sometimes, and that's not, I mean, being mindful of those, of that inner speak, I guess, too. But I kind of came in halfway through what you were saying, but still that had an impact on me. I appreciate that. It's great to see you out here, Chris. How are you doing?
Thanks. I'm doing really well. Hi, Jason. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Samantha. Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Verse 40 we're on, right?
Yep.
It's a small one, but it's a big one.
Yeah, right? I like the book. Returning is the motion of the Tao. That reminds me of nature's cycles. You got winter going into spring and summer, and then it sort of returns to winter again, and then it also goes back to spring and summer. So it's kind of like a cycle. Life kind of happens in cycles. I more see it as somewhat of a little bit of a spiral, not just necessarily a circle, because I see things going forward, like in time, So, but like a circle,
cool.
Maybe like a spiral, Yielding is the way of the Tao. That seems awfully pertinent to personal relationships to me. Like a lot of relationships or things when they're coming up, there's some yielding involved, and that's usually, usually the best way. You gotta yield in some form or another. Doesn't mean you don't have to make a choice, but sometimes you have to sort of, yield, I guess. Just let the answer come, or sometimes you have to yield to others' ideas or what's happening. 10,000 things are born of being. That's like the this reminds me of, and then it says being is born of non-being. This reminds me of this particle search they had with the Higgs boson particle, and they were smashing the atom a couple of years ago. Well, I'm not sure if being is born of non-being. That was one of the things they had when they smashed the atom, is that, they were kind of saying, well, no, this particle has existed in what was called the void or the atom. So I don't know. I don't know that that's true, because they were discovering that there was a sort of being there at the bottom of everything, you know, which is like really advanced physics. So I'm not sure exactly how that works scientifically.
Yeah, quantum physics is not something that's easy to wrap your head around.
Right.
I was reading something about that also, Chris, where they were actually saying that particles would just appear in that quantum vacuum, and that they were not there, and then suddenly they were there, like they had come from nothingness. And when, I don't know, Wayne Dyer kind of touches on that just slightly at the beginning of this chapter, where he's talking about those particles, those tiniest particles, when they did crash them together, was that they were coming from an energy wave of some sort versus matter, which was kind of an interesting way of looking at it. I mean, I don't think there is necessarily such a thing as nothingness. I think it's just that it is not the physical form that, I mean, we live in the physical realm, right? You know, we don't live in that energy realm. We live in the physical realm of matter and substance and all of that kind of thing. But we know that there is something other than just the physical realm, because we can interpret it without, I mean, we all interpret these things that are non-physical. We just don't completely understand how it is that we interpret that, right? Like emotions and feelings and you know, people that can see auras and I mean, there's so many different aspects to everything that, I mean, light in and of itself, I mean, that's not matter. And but anyway, I think that
I agree that, you know, and there's stuff we see that we just don't know how to interpret. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we feel like we don't see it, but it's there, you know.
Right, exactly. Even if it's not physical matter, it's something. Now, we like to call it energy because we don't know what other word to call it, I think, because you know, energy is something that flows. And Chris, you commented on the spiral, and Catherine mentioned the spiraling earlier too. I thought that was really interesting that you both kind of touched on that. But I don't know. That's a deep subject. You know, maybe sometime we should study some quantum physics or metaphysical stuff. That would be interesting.
Well, what I do know about that is you know, at the molecular level, with our atoms are attracted to each other through different types of bonds, but so they naturally attract to each other, and even from the studies that I've read of, they will. I mean, if you leave, like, they will actually bind together, even elements that aren't really, they aren't really readily able to bond. But if you put them together long enough, they will take on properties of each other. You know, so things do want to come together. But like, I think the particle, the Higgs boson experiment with the particle accelerator, that's a good example of what I think. That Lao Tzu speaks of when he speaks of human beings getting mixed up in the Tao or not following along with the way, where everything. It was the last verse where he says, you know, these things from the ancient times arise from one. The sky is whole and clear, the earth is whole and firm, the spirit is whole and full, and the 10,000 things are whole, and the country is upright. All these things are in virtue of wholeness. When man interferes with the Tao, the sky becomes filthy, the earth becomes depleted, the equilibrium crumbles, and the creatures become extinct. You know, much the same as when they're smashing these particles together as, you know, fast as they can to get a reaction. We're destroying something, it's not, you know, as in with Dr. Dyer was speaking of, he's saying that's an idea of how things don't come together. But I think that, you know, that's an example of us meddling with it. So that's the reason why they don't come together. I think naturally they do come together. And you know, like you said, I mean, particles can form out of just the energies and not the dark matter, or, that we can't even, you know, we can't even assess, we can't even see yet, but we know it's there, you know. But that's all. I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that it was sort of, I understand what Dr. Wayne Dyer is saying, but I'm thinking a little bit differently about it, you know.
So many of the things you said, Jason, made me think so many different directions. I don't know if I can possibly even round them up. But one thing you said struck me. You said we sometimes don't know how to interpret what we see. And I saw the coolest video on, it was a gentleman who's been doing this for like 50, 60 years. He's a professor at Harvard, and he has a lot of different things that he does. But the thing that he's been doing so long is studying over the lifetime of a lot of different individuals. And he did a TED Talk around one particular individual, and within that, he showed it was a video from, like, you know, last century, and of course last century is just so long ago. I mean, it was like I wish I'd paid attention to the year, but it was like, you know, like when I was in grade school in my mind. And he was involved with some lab rats. He has focused on emotions, and he was convinced that these lab rats were laughing. And they've taken this video and they've brought it up, you know, to today's abilities, and somebody realized they needed to put the sound, you know how when a dog can hear a siren that you can't hear and just goes crazy. They did whatever. I think it had to do with megahertz. I'm not sure. But they could hear these little chirps, you know, like little laughing sounds. And so he put his hand in. Of course, he was able to do this, to stick it into the video. But I guess he probably must have been pointing out what he had done. He had been tickling the lab rats, and they liked it. It was funny how he said that, because today now they can check different things and tell, you know, if it's a yes or a no as in terms of what these animals wanted. And but they had liked the hands, and so he took his hands and started to move them around, and the lab rats would move around with his hands, and it was just an unqualified yes that they liked what was going on, and they were laughing. And I think, you know, we think we're so advanced, and then we find out that there's this whole, you know, area outside of the test deal. You know, it's kind of like, well, the rest of the universe, you're only focused on the, you know, whatever it is. But one thing that he said as he was talking about the particleless energy, vector form, you must have come from an originating spirit. And as I read that, I was reminded of watching a video of Dr. Hugh Lin and the Ho'oponopono prayer, and he had gone up to the blackboard and he had drawn circles, and he said, first of all, here's your spark of divinity. You're a spark of divinity. And so it just made me think, you come from an originating spirit, And then basically the way I understood the rest of his drawing, that spark then creates these other parts of you. He had the subconscious mind, he had the conscious mind, and he had the he had the superconscious mind, the conscious mind, and the subconscious mind. And I have been thinking on that now, I don't know, 3 months. I think I mentioned it, 2 or 3 months ago on this call. But that picture comes to my mind a lot in reference to how we come from spirit. And that's not how I was raised in my religion, to view any of that. But if I think about spirit, I think physical and non-physical. And if it's non-physical, what are we seeing? I mean, some people can see it. You talked about some people see ours, some people see this, some people see something. I mean, yesterday was my mother's birthday. I saw the photograph I was holding in front of me as I talked to her. And, you don't really have to see anything. So I'm telling you, I had dozens and dozens of ideas as you spoke, Jason, but that's the end of my share for the moment.
Wow, that was terrific. That was terrific. I like that. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much out there, and how we interpret things, what our perception is. How much that matters is. I mean, sometimes it's mind-boggling, because you start to realize that so much of it is within your own power to control. When you think of it that way too. I don't know. This verse is pretty deep. It does go far to say, how things like are cyclical in nature, like Chris was saying, and but I don't think that, it's not to say that yielding to these cycles completely is, to me, the most practical way to live. So I like to think that even though we yield to this, and we strive to understand it and be part of it, and use it to the best of our abilities, we still need to, instead of trying to force things, I think the way we can do it is to really just keep whatever's important to us, whatever we want, our goals, on top of our mind as much as possible, and just really focus and use and try and exercise our will to maintain that focus, so that we can continue on the right path, in the right direction, and not be misdirected by or taken off track by those things. Like Samantha, you were saying, that there's so much out there in our own realities that's imposing, that's keeping us from thinking clearly about our decisions, and making us, just causing us that internal turmoil, as well as the outside things and the outside influences, but also, I mean, in this day and age, the technical issues that we have to deal with. I mean, it's, if we just relax and yield, a lot of that's, we've got to at least get through all these things that are imposing on us to keep us from doing things. I think when it gets down to, if we get through that, then what really needs to be done, the actual actions that are, that will get us the results we want, are actually pretty easy. But it's first getting there, and also still trying to maintain that flexibility to yield. I mean, it seems kind of confounded, but that's the best I can make of it all. What about you guys? Oh, and I hope my my mic wasn't muted.
No, you were doing great, Jason. We could hear you loud and clear. That's awesome. Actually, Catherine, you kind of had a thought earlier that you were running along. I don't know if you remember what you were saying when Jason was trying to sort out all his sound and everything. And do you remember what you were talking about? All right. Okay.
It had to do with living in Indiana and how she knew what that was like.
Yeah. Oh, something. I don't know, maybe it'll come to you. If it does, jump out. I think that was what you just said, Jason. That was pretty important. That whole yielding and yet taking action, and depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish and all of that kind of thing. And of course, this week with my whole apartment search and then my back and forth about the more expensive apartment versus the less expensive apartment and all of that, and I think just kind of realizing that part of being human is having all of these 10 million things going on in our heads and not being sure what to do. And I think it's kind of just yielding to the fact that we are human and we have all these things that are telling us back and forth, blah, 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 what to do. And we just have to kind of recognize, okay, well, no matter what we do, it's okay. It's okay. And we will just roll with it. Whatever decision that we make or whatever direction that we take is going to end up with some kind of result or no result, or it's going to send you in one direction or another. And when we can just yield to whatever that happens to be, then we release so much of this turmoil that we cause for ourselves. And, in some ways, because we've talked about this before, when there's all these things going on in the world, like, well, not last week, but the week before, when Catherine, you brought up how Sandy was in Miami, and Miami was having this big thing about spraying the poison in the air for the mosquitoes and all of that. And then, Jason, I think you were maybe speaking towards, okay, taking action versus not taking action. And, where do you find yourself on the spectrum of taking action versus not doing something? And we run into this whole aspect of what we think we should do or what we think we shouldn't do based on whether or not we're living in the Tao or following our religion or doing what our parents say that we should do, or doing what society says is right or wrong, or whether you are. And the thing is that all of those interpretations are right in one aspect or not right in another aspect, depending on your entire own personal point of view. There is really no right or wrong answer in that situation, whether just for that particular thing, whether you become an activist and you start trying to fight against it, or whether you are a pacifist and you just move away from it. From a personal point of view, each one of those is correct. I mean, it all depends on what feels right to you. Just like my decision to go with this one apartment versus the other apartment, no matter which one I would have chosen, it would have been okay. It's just that was the direction that felt the best, the most positive, felt right for me, right? And the thing is that when we base our decisions on what we think everybody else thinks that we should do, or whether or not we think we're going to measure up to someone because we take action or we don't take action or whatever, that's when we create this turmoil for ourselves. Or when we're trying to, it always has something to do with some outside thing versus what we personally feel ourselves. When I was in school, there was all kinds of stuff that my school taught us that I felt contradicted, or I felt it wasn't right. It didn't feel right. It felt bad for me. And now I can look back on some of those things like this. When Wayne talks about this, he's talking about in this chapter, Saul of Tarsus, and how he wrote with this one verse from Ephesians, you were created to be like God, so you must please him and be truly holy. In school, they were like teaching stuff like this, like it's law. And now that we can look back on it, I can say that was one interpretation of what was actually trying to be said. And I'm like, I don't think that we were necessarily created to be like God. I think, now this is my personal opinion, and we got to remember that we all have our own opinion about things. And when we try and conform to someone else's opinion, that's when it feels wrong, right? So my personal opinion is that we are a manifestation of God ourselves. And when we embrace that, then we become truly holy or at peace or whatever, right? And so maybe that's what Saul of Tarsus was actually trying to tell people, but because of that time and that age and the way that people would take things, they couldn't accept that they themselves were an aspect of God. They had to be told that God is outside of themselves, and that if you just conform to what God says, then you'll be okay. And that was good for them. But for me, it didn't seem right, right? And so, but everything is okay. I mean, all interpretations are right if it feels right for you. That's kind of my take on the whole, well, all of everything I kind of talked about, the yielding and the, our ego and all of those different things. But and again, it's my personal feelings from my own personal perspective, and whatever your feelings are and your what feels right for you, I feel like is the right way. And it's just when we let everybody else tell us what we think we should feel and how we should be and what we should believe, that's when that turmoil happens inside of ourselves. And so yielding to your own inner guidance, that's what I think. Okay, that's all for now.
While you were saying that, I remembered one of the things that was making me feel so jostled in my mind was you had said maybe we should study some quantum physics, and I was going to suggest that we, if we want to do that, that we maybe take a look at some of Greg Kuhn's works. Also, I think that it would be fun if we maybe looked at some of Joe Dispenza's works, and I'm almost always flooded in the back of my mind. Although he's, a generation removed and not a quantum physicist at all, Neville Goddard. And part of what you were saying really sparked that again in me, because I really feel that he helped me begin the real changes. You can read and study and listen for years, and if you don't get that you've got to change some of your beliefs and then start changing some of your beliefs, nothing really happens. And it was that very question about, the way he says it really bluntly. He says, if you believe you pray to a God outside of yourself, you're praying to the wrong God. And I'm going, oh, come on. My God's outside, he's inside, he's through, he's around, he's whatever. I can take it however you want. And then I kept thinking about all the years. When you get close to approaching 67, this is when you think about these things. All the years I have spent daily on my knees. Now, tell me, was I bringing God down on my knees with me inside, or did I believe he was outside of me to do that? I mean, I really had to take a look at that, because, nobody really ever asked me in my whole life if I thought God was outside of me or inside of me. I didn't get the opportunity to say, well, this is what I believe over here, and this is how I think this works over here. I had to really wrestle with that. And it's gatherings like this. This is why I love this Mastermind so much, that you start to pick up on how, oh, Chris said this, and I agree, or, Catherine, every time she opens her mouth, except for the thing about Indiana, which I am not a part of, I enjoy what she has to say. And you're mentioning how we can wrestle with trying to please other people. You know, sometimes I think I've gotten past that, which, you know, lasts about a nanosecond. And this is how long it lasted last week. I had driven a friend, uh, or I was out driving in her car after we had stopped at, you know, LASIK surgery for her so that I could drive her home. And I found a dog, a small dog, right in the middle of my car. I mean, all at once, you know, blank street, and then there's this dog, and it's like, urch. And I opened my door, and I was relieved to see the dog right there at my door. But, you know, I was thinking, how can I get this dog inside? And I realized afterwards, I actually wrote a post about it. I thought, you know what? I was concerned about those cars behind me who couldn't even see that little dog, who had no idea why I had screeched to a halt while I was, you know, just there, just, you know, and I thought about all those chemicals pouring through not just my brain, but my body, trying to, you know, it was back and forth. It was like, I need to grab this dog up and pull it in the car, and I need to, you know, I need to take my foot off the brake, and I need to go, and I need to, you know, just a jillion things. And I was so glad that I have been practicing paying attention to my thoughts. So I was recognizing the effect that, you know, I didn't need to take in. I mean, I kind of did. I didn't really want to be banged up or anything. But we are so swayed by the people around us. So thanks.
That is another great example, Karen. I love that. That's so true. It's the littlest things that we will sit there and we'll allow what we think other people are thinking to sway our thought processes, sway our actions, and all of the above. I love it. Thank you.
I got to see a really good example of this. I just got back from Nashville helping a friend there with cancer, and she is very open to naturopathic type remedies, you know, as natural as possible. And I went there and did medical ozone with her and got her on sort of a Rife type machine, which actually corrects your intracellular frequencies. And but she is still doing the radiation. Like they told her chemo and radiation. She said no to chemo, and she said okay to radiation. But in her mind, like every day, all day, she's in this pattern of, oh my gosh, I hate this radiation. I don't want to do this radiation because it's going to do this and this and this to my body, which the doctor told her it would. And even after just 5 days of treatment, we were starting to see some bad side effects of the radiation. And she's so torn. Like my heart goes out to her so badly because here she has this cancer in her body. The doctors, thank God, the doctor said, go ahead and do all your natural stuff that you want to because it'll help counteract the side effects of the radiation. Thank God he said that to her because she's really relying on his word. And if he had said, but this is what he said also. He said it will counteract the side effects. It will not cure the cancer. And I wish he had never said that to her because now she has it fixed in her mind that she has to do this radiation. That's the only thing that's going to take care of the cancer. When in actuality, we have her on about 5 different remedies right now that will, each one of those could take care of the cancer. And so here she's going out, you know, she can't drive, so she's got to get rides 5 days a week to this treatment. The whole time her mind is saying, oh, this is going to do this to me. And I told her, you know, only you can decide what you're going to do. If you're going to do the radiation or not, that's your choice. But if you're going to do it, you got to change the way you think about it. You got to think about it like, this is the perfect thing for me to do. It's going to do exactly what it needs to do. It's not going to cause any side effect. Like, you got to change, because our minds really do not distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. The body reacts in the same way, with the same flood of chemicals, the same, chaos goes on, whether you're really being chased by a bear or you think you're being chased by a bear. Either way, your body goes through all those emotions. And I just wish that she could find some peace around that. And at this time, she's not able to. And I can understand that too, because it's, she's been taught to listen to physicians, and I'm just like, no, don't listen to them. But these things, sometimes we come up against situations in our life where I wish she would just do what feels good in her heart. Sometimes that's the only way that we're guided, is by doing what feels good in your heart, your next step, the right next step. And not basing your decisions on what so-and-so says, what so-and-so says, what so-and-so says, or what you read here or what you heard here. But really, as you take that next step forward and you have two choices, which one can you breathe with? Which one can you take that step in? Okay, that feels good. Or you take the step this way. Oh no, that doesn't feel good. Like, God tells you, our God self somehow tells us just in our breath whether something is good or bad. And so just take those steps that feel good. That's all I can say, even when we don't understand it. I think yielding is our savior from suffering. So I love you guys. See you next week.
Yeah, I love what you said there, Catherine. Real quick, that our mindset's really important. Staying positive is huge, and it really does work. And I love you guys, and I know everyone out there watching this has amazing potential, and you're all wonderful people. So go in front of the mirror after you're off of this, and give yourself a big smile, and wear that smile throughout the day, and just I think you'll notice a difference in your day. And I wish you the very best, and have a great weekend. It's wonderful to be here. I love you all, and you take care. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine and Jason, for those final thoughts. Karen, did you have any final thoughts, or Chris?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I just want to say I love you guys too. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Awesome, guys. Have an awesome, amazing, wonderful weekend. And we just want to thank those of you who are viewing us. Thanks for watching, and we'd love to have you join us. And you can find out how to join, or we meet every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern, or most every Saturday. It's not every week. We didn't do it last week, but most every Saturday. We've been doing this for, 3.5 years now? A long time. But anyway, we get together on Saturdays. We discuss awesome topics like this. And right now we're discussing the Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao by Wayne Dyer. And next week we'll be talking about verse 41 of the Tao Te Ching. If you'd like to join us, you can find all the instructions on how to get to this Zoom for you, you're going to watch it as a recording, but if you want to join us live, you can find out how to do that on zoom.saturdaymorningmastermind.com. That's zoom.saturdaymorningmastermind.com. And then, of course, you can find all our blogs and replays and all that kind of thing at mindsetmasterycollective.com. So if you like this video, click like below the video here on YouTube. Leave us a comment on YouTube or on our blog, whichever, and we'd love to hear from you and have you participate with us. So have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye.